Subarus have got a bit of a reputation.
They do have just a touch of a reputation, but that's not something that we'll be playing into at all today.
No, we're not about stereotypes or the type of person who may or may not want to drive this. Nice shirt.
Thanks, it's new.
And it's autumn.
And
so
it is.
It's plaid weather.
It's pumpkin spice season.
And this is the Subaru Solterra. It's basically a Toyota BZ4X with a Subaru badge slapped on the front, an insistence on all-wheel drive, and a few nips and tucks to make it more appealing to the kind of people who
maybe aren't afraid of commitment, like to go camping.
Like cats.
Yeah.
And have plaid.
Yeah.
Should we take it for a spin?
I think so.
I think we tick all those boxes.
Show me a way out, give me your side of the story. Throw me a rope here, I've drifted way too far. I see it sometimes behind those kind eyes. I see it sometimes behind those kind eyes.
So let's talk about the interior. So this is a very ruggedized interior. We've driven this vehicle before in different guises. Subaru says this is built on its e-global platform.
Yes.
Which is, it's the same platform as the Toyota BZ4X and the Lexus that we drove last year. And inside, it's very obvious that they are the same vehicle underneath. So you've got that same really long reach to the driver display. You've got that same expanse at the front. And you've got the same kind of setup inside. But the Subaru's much more kind of cozy and rugged.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's weird mix of utilitarian and yet not.
I mean, there's kind of, it's not a plaid. It's kind of this, it's not corduroy. I don't even know what this is. I believe this is a recycled material, but it's kind of this textured, not quite proper fabric feel, and then hard plastics everywhere, and then randomly piano black.
Well, if you don't have piano black, you can't get fingerprints on it, so...
But the rest of the car has no piano black apart from the center console and the door area. Everything else is kind of quite rugged, and you can imagine it not requiring a lot of cleaning to keep it in a decent enough space, and then piano black.
Yeah, which is an interesting choice. I'd have preferred something not piano black, but then I say that every vehicle we get in that has piano black, I'm like, I would prefer not to have piano black, but okay.
It's reasonably comfortable though. The seats are nice.
Yeah, and multi-way adjustment, 2-position.
For both the front passenger and the driver. Obviously the driver's got memory, two-way memory.
Yeah, you don't get two-way memory. But
I've got adjustability here as well.
Yeah, and these, I mean, they're quite thin when you look at them. If you look at the seat back, it doesn't look that thin, but they're good and supportive. They're nice and firm. Mm-hmm. I've actually found this a really comfortable car to drive.
And you get lumbar support for the driver, not for the passenger at the front. But that's okay. It's kind of interesting though, because I like to generally sit high, and I like to look over the top of the steering wheel and down to the road and have that commanding view. I sit high in my pickup truck compared to everybody else. I sit high in our Bolt compared to everybody else. But in this, I found I had to sit lower because I was unable to see the driver display otherwise.
And there's also the driver sensing thing here, which it's important that you can see, because otherwise the car will spend its entire life shouting at you.
And it does encourage you to drive at the 10 and 2 or 3 and 9 position.
Whatever they teach. Don't they teach this one now, like 4 and... whatever.
I swear they change it every couple of years just to irritate the previous generation of drivers. But you can't have your hand up at the top of the steering wheel because that will obscure the sensors and then it will complain. Around town, this has got like the below 25 miles an hour. It's got the assistance system that allows you to have some level of semi-autonomous driver assistance. But it's...
Stop and go traffic on the freeway.
It's stop and go traffic on the freeway, but it's nothing that is going to get you super excited. Nothing that's going to get you kind of super engaged about having, oh, look, I've got hands-free driving. None of that really in this vehicle. I do believe that comma will work with this vehicle because it works, I believe, with the BZ4X as well.
But it does have, I mean, it has lane keep assist and all the kind of crossing the line warnings that you expect in a modern vehicle.
There's a really sizable amount of rear room for passengers.
Yeah, the rear seat space is pretty good, and the rear luggage space is pretty good.
And you can fold the seats flat.
And you can fold the seats flat, you've got a big hatchback. I mean, that is, like, it is an SUV, but it's an SUV with a slopey back.
And you've got rear heated seats in this one. The outboard seats are heated, and it's a 3-stage heated seat, which is interesting. We are driving the touring version of this, which is kind of the more upmarket version, which means you have the 20-inch wheels, you have a few more bells and whistles, you have heated and ventilated front seats, and then you have a 3-stage heated outboard seats in the rear.
2-stage heated steering wheel.
2-stage heated steering wheel, which is unusual for a vehicle in this price point.
It is, and I think that's really down to the way Subaru sell their vehicles. Like, they are very much, we are the better equipped version of Toyota when it comes to this vehicle. I think the other thing to say about the interior, like, it has this strip here which is not buttons, it's a capacitive thing. And I have a fight with myself because I get very frustrated when everything is on the advert screen up here. But when I first got in this vehicle, it was dark, it was a late-ish evening, and this was very bright and kind of distracting, and it's kind of intense. There's a lot of stuff there, and I think it's something you get used to, and I think that's something that is fairly consistent between both Toyota and Subaru, this kind of level of busyness. I'm not an enormous fan of it. I feel like it could be simplified a little bit, but it is very nice to have a heated front windscreen.
Yeah, and it's a proper heated front windscreen. It's a proper electric front windscreen. The other thing we should point out with the interior here is that there is this lovely moonroof, which is optional. We have it in this particular version because it's the Touring, and the Touring has all of the bells and whistles. You can opt not to have it, which I think a lot of people who would be buying this for Subaru type activities might want to forego that roof. They get a little bit of extra space, I think, on top, and less risk of anything breaking if they want to put a roof rack or something on top of the vehicle.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be dropping your canoe paddle on it or something. That would probably suck, or your canoe. So below the piano black, that I don't like, there is some storage here, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's kind of the boat floor that's become really standard in a lot of EVs. You also get 2 USB-C charging outlets and a 12-volt outlet, and then in the back you also get 2 USB-C charging outlets for the rear seat passengers in the Touring version. I like that this space is here and it allows you to, store. I've got my bag in there right now. The thing is, Kate, I really like the idea of being able to put your phone away so that you're not distracted while you're driving. And having this little cubby here that you can charge your phone in is a really good idea. When I put my iPhone 13 Pro Max in there, which did fit, you'd hear this whirring as it would align the coils to get things charging. But my iPhone 16 Pro Max doesn't fit, so that's one point knocked off. And then the second point knocked off is that while this does have wireless Android Auto and wireless CarPlay, you've had issues with the Android Auto.
Yeah, whenever I get in the car, it's a bit of a roll of the dice as to whether it's actually going to connect. And sometimes it comes up and it's straight away, and sometimes it's a matter of me finicking with the phone for a few minutes, and sometimes it comes up. I have to tell the car that it should connect to my phone, and I've not had that with recent other vehicles. Like early on when wireless Android Auto first appeared, sure, I had connectivity issues. But with this car, I've had kind of persistent ones, particularly if it's been connected and then I've turned the car off, gone away for a few minutes, come back, then I don't get connected, and I don't know what's going on with that.
The other thing that we cannot avoid is there's no navigation as standard on this car.
No.
I mean, it's there,
Yes.
but you have to subscribe to it.
Yeah, you have to have it set up with the connected app, and I don't use navigation in cars very much. I use it when we have cars on review to test, but I can't test this because we don't have a subscription.
And Subaru didn't see fit to put an account on there, which some automakers do, right? They'll put an account on and go, okay, yeah, guest access, we'll give you access to all of the features. But for some reason, Subaru didn't put it on for this vehicle. And I don't think that the Toyota or the Lexus we drove had this.
Yeah, the giant advert on screen whenever
All
you turn
time.
the car on. So that's kind of obnoxious, having a big advert here. And yes, you can press buttons to do other things with it, but its default position is to say you need to be buying our subscription.
You don't have single pedal driving when you turn the car on. And let's talk about that, because it's not really single pedal driving.
It's not. It has 4 different levels of regen, assuming the car is not charged, which, if the car is charged, it has no regen, but doesn't warn you that it's not going to slow down, which is kind of irritating. But those 4 different levels of regen, even at the most, it's really pretty light.
Yeah, so I'm going to lift off my throttle now, and it's going to slow down for this corner, which is fine. But once it gets down to a certain speed, it stops regenning.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that. I've tried it a few times, that when you're in reasonably smooth flowing traffic, but you say come up to a traffic light, you let off and the car in front of you slows, and it slows down to, I don't know, 30-ish miles an hour, and then suddenly it's like, no, I'm done. We're done regenning now, which is kind of weird.
And it doesn't feel all that predictable. It behaves very much like a Toyota Prius did in that regard. Like, I don't ever remember my Toyota Prius having full single pedal driving. Although I think the regen on our Prius in B mode was actually a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the regen in B mode on the original RAV4
Was very good.
Was very good. So it's surprising that it's so weak, and it's disappointing. I think it's also, I would say, this is something that most car companies get wrong, and Subaru and Toyota have not done any different, which is that when the battery is full, it should, at the very least, alert you to the fact that it is not going to regen brake. I really honestly think it should be applying the friction brakes to simulate the regen that you have set.
Yes.
But at the very least, it should be annoyingly shouting at you like Kias do, which is to say, your battery is full. I am not going to regen. You are going to plow into the car in front.
Yes. And then applying emergency braking if required.
Yes.
In terms of emergency assistance features, this has a lot. It's got cross-traffic alert. It's got a please don't get out of the car, there's someone coming alert if the door is open.
Or
And
if it's closed and the car is in that switched off state.
Right, and it's it's user selectable, right? So you can turn those features on or off to some extent. It does the cross traffic. If you're coming to a junction and you're going forwards and it knows something's coming and it thinks you're going to pull out into traffic, it will tell you. And it will do the same if you're backing out of a parking space. That's all fantastic and great. And that's all standard Toyota safety features. And if you're watching this and you're going, it feels like we're talking a lot about Toyota rather than Subaru, it's because this is a Toyota with a Subaru badge. There's no way around it. While this is just effectively a Toyota with a Subaru badge on it, there have been some really important decisions made by Subaru that I think have really improved this vehicle's performance based on the BZ4X and the Lexus that we drove last year. And the first one is that when they were negotiating, which variants they were going to offer under which badge, Subaru was like, no, we don't want a single motor variant. We only want to offer the dual motor variant.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that they did right is that unlike the Lexus, they used a balanced motor front and rear. So it's 80 kilowatts front and rear. And that leads to a much more managed driving experience.
Oh, it's glorious. We just took that mountain pass and the car felt so sure-footed. It went round corners with minimal kind of upset. It was pretty flat in its handling and the power delivery was very, very good.
I think the other thing is to note that it has the same size battery pack as the rest of its kin, so about 73 kilowatt hours. They don't specify whether that's nominal or usable.
But it also has the same problematic charging.
And it is important, I think, to note that this is the 2024 and it has improved rapid charging according to Subaru. It says that it can get up to 100 kilowatts. I haven't seen that. I've seen 40-ish,
Yeah, I haven't
45.
seen it super high. But then I suspect you might need to precondition the battery to get the high temperature, and we don't have a navigation system subscription that allows us to do that.
Yeah, so I don't know whether that's something that you'd see better. The other thing is it almost certainly has that same problem that the original BZ4X had, which is if you charge it more than a couple of times in a day, then it really ramps down its charging. So yeah, if you're going to go miles and miles, if you're wanting something to do long road trips, this is probably not the car for you. If you're going out into the wild and you're going to do maybe one charging stop on the way and then slow charge at your campsite, you're golden.
Go for it. This is really irking me now, right? Please experience Drive Connect. No, I want you to give me something useful. And if we go into this, right, and we go to other things in the vehicle, you can have apps, right? But then this is all stuff that you have to remote authorization required. I don't want remote authorization. I don't want to enable enable audio. This will stream Apple Music or Amazon Music to your car, right? And it has the ability to do that. But the radio, it has a normal radio, it has Sirius XM, but you have to sign in.
Yeah.
And if you want anything other than an AM FM radio, you have to sign in. Yes, you can do your CarPlay or your Android Auto, but I don't necessarily want a dashboard that's telling me the things that I should be signing up for.
And let's be clear, this trim level of this vehicle is north of 50 grand. It's not far north, it's like 52.
Right, the base model I think is like 46, 48, depending on how you spec it.
But at that point, I feel like I've given them enough money to have a car that doesn't advertise at me.
And let's look at the competing vehicles, right? So for that kind of money, you could end up with a Volkswagen ID4 for a similar kind of money, faster charging, similar kind of size and spec. You could also go with a mid-range Ford Mustang Mach-E. And if you spent another 5 to 10 grand on top, you could end up with a higher spec Mustang Mach-E that's got a longer range battery, that's got all-wheel drive, that is faster, that really does go when you squeeze the go pedal. This doesn't have acceleration that will get you excited. It's all-wheel drive for traction, not all-wheel drive for power. And that's okay. A lot of people will like that. But it's not a vehicle you're going to drive in anger and enjoy.
I think it's brisk is the way that I feel about it. It's
Yeah, I mean, I can open it up and it goes, but it's not like it doesn't punch you.
No, and a lot of people don't need that and don't necessarily want that. And particularly for the kind of driving that I think Subaru believe that their drivers will do, this is fine.
Yeah, I could live with this.
I mean, it is basically the same amount of power as my Niro, but four-wheel drive, which I like. I feel like that's a good amount of power for a family car.
The Mustang Mach-E is much, much bigger than this.
Yeah.
It's a bigger car. You get a frunk, but it doesn't have the visibility. The visibility in this is great.
In this car is actually excellent.
You don't have to worry about a lot of the charging worries that you have with this car if you have a Mustang Mach-E. Plus, you obviously have access to the supercharger network through an NACS adapter. We don't know when that's going to happen for Subaru, or in fact, it's going to happen for Toyota. If you are not a driver, if you're not a driver's driver, this car makes more sense.
I think depending on what price you can get it for, because as we know, Subaru have been offering some fairly hefty discounts to get this shifting, because it hasn't been.
It hasn't been, but it drives well. The suspension's a little harsh in places, but it just works. It's a car that you get in and drive, that you don't necessarily have to think about driving in a particular way. It drives very much like a hybrid or an ICE vehicle in a lot of ways. For some people that will be a good thing. For other people that will be an ooh, no thanks.
Yeah.
And I do believe that it will be reasonably rugged. Although, to finish out, let's talk about some of the metalwork on this car.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the metalwork. I find that the exterior panels, they're not going to take a beating.
It's very... There have been corners cut.
Yeah, I mean, you find, like, the plastic at the front, on the front bumper, it's quite soft. You can deform the kind of little wingy bits that it has next to the front edge of the bonnet. They bend if you lean on them. When you slam a door, you can see it moving. And the charging door, I said this about the BZ4X, I said it about the Lexus.
It's the same for this car.
It's the same charging door, and I'm like, really? You can just make this feel slightly less nasty?
Yeah. The only other thing I would add here is if you're going to buy this, buy the entry-level model. Go with a lower spec vehicle. Get the smaller wheels, which will have more rubber on them, which means you'll get a better range per charge. You should get about 230 miles EPA-ish in the real world if you drive it sensibly. This is about 220-ish miles, so a little less. But I think it'll also handle a little bit better, and I also think it'll be better on less pleasant roads.
It'll also be cheaper.
Indeed.
I do love myself some reasonably priced rubber.
And you know what? I also like a cup of tea. How about we go and find a nice cafe to have a lovely beverage at?
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
No review of the Subaru Solterra in the autumn would be complete without autumnal leaves, a nice warm beverage, and the wonderful Cathedral Coffee here in Scappoose. Not sponsored, they just let us review our cars and do our end pieces outside. So thank you to them for that. I hope your beverage is lovely.
It is. It is not pumpkin spice.
Because you've already had one today.
Because I've had one today. And I feel appropriately dressed, as are you.
Yes.
Plaid.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're kind of leaning heavily into the stereotypes of the type of person who might end up buying the Subaru Solterra, but it's...
I think you may have mispronounced that.
Yes, sorry. Subaru is a common furry derivation of Subaru, and I just love thinking of the Solterra as a Sontaran, complete with the Welsh accent.
Well, yes. I mean, anything with a Welsh accent is a solid choice.
Yes, but you know, all jokes aside, this is the best busy forks you can't buy from Toyota.
Yeah, and to be fair, that is actually kind of the way that Subaru market it. They say, look at the specs of the busy forks, look at the specs of the Solterra, we're better and we're cheaper.
But not by much.
No, it's not cheap.
We're not the
talking
sticker
cheap.
price of this is heading into mid-range Ford Mach-E territory.
Yes.
And the difference is the Mach-E attracts federal tax incentives. So you take into account the federal tax incentives, and then it's very, very evenly matched. And the Solterra doesn't have any federal tax incentives.
And the Mach-E charges quicker. So
Yes.
if you are someone who does a ton of that kind of long distance driving, yeah.
But, you know, Subaru has, if you're buying a Subaru, I think you're buying a Subaru for the brand. And I think that is something that Subaru is relying on here, right? The brand has a lot of cachet. Mm-hmm. And while this car feels the most Toyota of any Subaru I've driven for obvious reasons, it's a Toyota, it still does the things that you would need a Subaru to do.
Yeah, it's got plenty of room in the back for
Second
that
date boxes, yeah.
Yeah, your moving boxes.
It's got a nice, unoffensive interior. I'm not a huge fan of the kind of the massive distance between the windscreen and the display, but that's Toyota's design, and it's just carried over. I also like the fact that it's got that all-wheel drive capability.
Yeah, I mean, this is a car that is really solid off-road, or in our case, when testing, definitely on-road.
Yeah, so Michael took it to a public road that is unpaved, where there are some large potholes, and said, you know, it just handled them just fine. I want to reiterate, it was a public highway, it was not off-road, so we weren't, you know...
So Subaru, we did not take your car off-road. It just looks that way.
It was just an unpaved road in, I think it was in Washington. Washington and Oregon have a lot of unpaved roads. It's surprising.
Yeah.
I don't like the charging speed.
No.
It is abysmal.
It is. Even in its enhanced 100 kilowatts that it can do now, we haven't seen that.
And if you do more than, I think, 2 fast charging sessions in a day, it does what the old Nissan Leafs used to do and go, no, sorry, you've charged too many times fastly. You must now sit and ponder the meaning of life around a campfire, which, you know, given the fact that it is a Subaru, you might just as likely be charging it at a campsite.
Yeah.
For your weekend away.
So in that case, I mean, I think it depends on what you want to do with it.
Right.
Like if you're gonna do motorway miles, then maybe this is not the best car for you. But if you're gonna go take it out into the woods, then this is a car which is definitely worth looking at in a way that the specs wouldn't suggest.
I don't like the fact that when the battery is full, you don't get regen, and it doesn't really communicate that well.
It doesn't tell you at all.
I don't like the naggingness that we had, and we complained about this with the busy forks, and we complained about it with the Lexus as well. So we've driven the Lexus, we've driven the BZ4X, and we've now driven the Solterra. So we've driven all 3 of these cars built on the same platform. They all nag you. And if you are someone who is used to driving with your hand up top, which, again, I don't want to lean into stereotypes, but I drive like this.
Yeah, it does shout at you then.
Because
and
it
tells
can't
you,
see
'cause
your
it can't
eyes.
see your eyes.
But the thing that I find that is most egregious, without a shadow of a doubt, is the fact that when you turn this car on, it tries to sell you stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a membership of Subaru's
Because I don't own a
because I
Subaru.
don't own a Subaru, and it does do that. It also, unlike most vehicles I've encountered with Android Auto and CarPlay, is not 100% reliable about connecting that. So It turns on and then advertises at me, and then I'm irritated because I'm like, just start Android Auto, for God's sake.
Yeah, and I think it's really disingenuous. If you bought a car, I don't want the car to turn on and start advertising to me. And look, I know Ford has patented something recently, right? That in the future will allow advertisements to be beamed to your center touchscreen display in future models. And Ford may decide not to use this, but I've seen a glimpse of it with the Solterra, and I do not like it, Kate.
No, this is a space which I've paid for. I do not wish to be advertised to in it.
Lifespan of this vehicle should be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen the longevity of this platform, but I think part of the reason that the charging speed is so poor is that Toyota is generally extremely cautious about these things, and I think I would expect it to last a good amount of time. We've seen the previous Toyota engineered EV lasts a very long time, so...
Would you buy one?
That's a really difficult question. It's a bit big for me, personally. Like, it is definitely bigger than the Nero, and the Nero is a bit big for me.
Yeah.
But if I wanted a vehicle that did four-wheel drive, did off-road, didn't need an enormous range, then it would definitely be one of the ones I would consider.
I definitely feel what you're saying about size. So it wasn't until I parked it adjacent to my wife's Chevrolet Bolt EV that I realized how big that car is. It is massive. The wheels are big. They are the smallest wheels, I think, of the options of the entire kind of family of vehicles. Obviously, the Lexus has such poor range because it has such massive wheels and small amount of rubber on those wheels. I've seen over 220 miles real world range, which is not the best. I keep coming back to my Bolt EV because my Bolt EV can do 250 miles on a charge.
Yeah, I mean, the day that you picked up my car, it told me it had 272 miles of range. And then I got in the Solterra the next morning after you had driven it in a spirited manner. And it told me it had 186, I think, 187 miles of range. And I typically, like, I've seen, having driven it a little bit and sort of toned down the impact of that driving, it's come back up over 200, but it's still sitting around 200 miles.
So like you, I would pick the car I currently have.
Yeah.
However, I would get a Solterra if it was less money than it currently is. We're talking, instead of kind of mid-40s, that's just what we're seeing now. If it was closer to 30, I would consider it. 25 to 30. It had better fast charging.
Yeah.
Then I would go for it. And I could live even with 220 miles of real world range if those other things were true. As it stands, I couldn't personally go for it. And we were talking to Michael this week when they were driving it, and they said basically the same thing. They prefer it to the Bolt, and if everything was equal, they would go with the Solterra rather than the Bolt.
Yeah.
But not everything is equal. I would prefer it to have a little bit more torque. The motors are spec'd for sure-footedness, not for additional power. But I think it's a competent example of what that platform can do. And honestly, I think Toyota should stop selling the single motor version of this vehicle, this platform, because the dual motor version is so much better. And if Subaru didn't sell a single motor version, there was a reason that Subaru didn't want to sell that car.
Well, it doesn't really fit with their brand.
Well, I guess we better go and help some friends move. I hear they're on their second date.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got some thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord chat room, our Patreon page, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure that we can remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers that you can sign up for from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly,
just over $10 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Alan Brim, Jim, Sarah Horlock, full name, Todd Johnson, Roderick, Stuart Despain, Rupert Ronson, Larry Phoenix, Darla, Wendy Kelly Bundenbaum, and Kay. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll also find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have a good old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at, address also linked below. And of course, if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store in the down below. Don't forget that Halloween is coming and we've got some great designs for the season. We've also got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we also think this one is well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.